For decades, a 1946 US offer to acquire Greenland from Denmark was a state secret. The exact offer is unknown, but US diplomats had previously floated a price of $100 million in gold. But it was a non-starter. Greenland was not for sale. Sound familiar?
We need Greenland for national security. One way or the other, we're going to get it.
President Trump plans to buy Greenland. Is that how this ends?
It wasn't. But even if it had, how does one price an island that you think secures a hemisphere?
What is, for example, the value of being able to stop a missile before it hits New York City?
While the security rationale seems to be quite strong, the economic case is not so clear.
In the end, Trump relented, and many pointed to a 1951 agreement with Denmark that already gives the US wide military access to Greenland. But then again, few ever believed the issue was really just about security.
It's clear that President Trump wants to recreate the sphere of influence of the United States over the Western Hemisphere.
Greenland is very keen to do more business and trade more with other nations. At the moment, most trade goes through Denmark.
Back in 1946, at least one answer to how much is Greenland worth was $100 million. Today, it's basically more money than you could print. So perhaps it's worth reframing the question. In the 15th century, Greenland's 500-year-old Viking colony vanished. Theories as to why make for fascinating reading. Then, slightly more recently, in a room at the World Economic Forum, a similar thing happened to President Trump's threat to buy or besiege the island.
What exactly happened in that room? We all saw Donald Trump on the podium.
We want a piece of ice for world protection.
Goes into a room with you and he says he has a framework for a deal.
The details of that deal are still emerging.
But for now seem to exclude his long-desired acquisition.
Trump first floated the idea of buying Greenland back in 2019.
He revived the idea again after winning his re-election in 2024.
He presented it as essentially this big real estate deal that would ease Denmark's finances.
Some background on that. Greenland is a semi-autonomous part of the Kingdom of Denmark. It sets its own domestic policies but relies on Copenhagen for about $600 million of annual grants to fulfill them.
Greenland's economy is very small. Fishing makes up almost all exports.
And its people are proud of that. Reliance on the sea is deeply embedded in Greenlandic life and culture, though the island is trying to diversify.
It's betting on tourism and mining, but progress is just very slow. That's because of a range of factors: high costs, limited infrastructure, harsh weather, and especially the lack of skilled workers.
In Trump's view, the American taxpayer could assume some of those costs and investments. But why would they want to? Greenland lives here in the Arctic Circle, and it's considered strategically valuable for several reasons.
First, the island is a critical location from which to monitor missile threats potentially coming from Russia. Russia's posture in the region has become much stronger. The country has been conducting drills and also signaling that in the future it might be willing to pursue much more forceful approach in the region.
The US has a military base in northern Greenland called the Pacific Space Base, where it has a radar system that monitors space and can detect missile launches.
But Trump had grander plans.
All we want from Denmark is this land on which we're going to build the greatest golden dome ever built. We're building a golden dome.
Golden Dome is President Trump's proposed missile and air defense program,
which involves deploying ground and space-based technology that doesn't yet exist, within a system many experts warn may not work. But there's another reason emerging as the world heats up.
The more that climate change leads to melting ice, the more that region is going to open up for maritime trade.
And in this extreme scenario, new routes would replace the polar ice cap. But this is a relatively small win, as rising sea levels would put low-lying cities like Rotterdam underwater. Routes across the Arctic can be far shorter than traditional passages like the Suez Canal. With $1 trillion worth of goods passing through the Suez each year, even a small shift or expansion to the Arctic could be lucrative. Now, you'll remember there was another argument that Washington used to make its case for owning the island.
One thing that has kind of surprised me is how the rhetoric has shifted. If you look at what President Trump was saying in 2025, the main reason to have Greenland was all about critical minerals and rare earth.
There is a Danish geological survey showing that Greenland might have around 35 deposits of so-called critical minerals.
Things like lithium and platinum group metals. According to the US Geological Survey, Greenland contains about 1.5 million metric tons of rare earths. But that's low compared to places like China, Vietnam, or Russia. And we don't even have data for nations like Madagascar or Thailand, where rare earths are being extracted at high levels. Having minerals in the ground is also not the same as bringing them to market. And that's the problem with Greenland. On paper, its strategic advantages are clear. Making use of them is another matter.
So far, the experience of 50 years of drilling for commodities in Greenland has indicated that there is nothing commercial there to be exploited.
Greenland only has 2 small mines, one for gold and one for anthracite.
Most of the deposits that people are looking at are far north, north of latitude 50, which means that it's almost winter permanently. It's very, very difficult to exploit.
You have to build everything: roads, runways, ports, housing, power, supply chains, and in quite remote Arctic locations.
So now Washington's argument has moved on.
There's certainly far more attractive places to mine for rare earths. Our interest is national security.
Whatever the interest, those fundamental obstacles, like big blank spaces on a map where roads need to be, remain the same. They also constrain the island's attempts to connect more directly with the world.
Greenland opened a new international airport in Nuuk, and the hope was to expand links and direct connections to other countries. But in the first year of being open has faced disruptions because of the weather. I personally had 2 flights cancelled on a trip to Nuuk last year because the plane simply couldn't land.
Which makes control of Arctic waterways essential for cargo ships and naval vessels alike, no matter their origin.
Russia and China, they're ramping up their presence in the Arctic, and Trump is very worried about that.
Which is why he says his Golden Dome should be anchored in Greenland. But putting aside whether it would work, what would it cost?
We estimate, and this is a little bit of a departure from what President Trump has said the price tag of the program would be, that it could cost up to $1 trillion based on us going through and looking at each individual component, from satellites to fighter aircraft to the munitions that they use.
True, only part of that cost would be attributable to Greenland, but the island makes anything logistically ambitious financially chilling. It's estimated that it already costs the US between $50 and $200 million a year to run a single overseas base, and that's before factoring in building one somewhere like this. So a back-of-the-envelope cost-benefit analysis of Greenland has already gone multi-envelope. But Trump's original plan also prompted fears of the death of NATO. Maybe before we cost up a NATO-less existence, it's worth understanding why Greenlanders insist no amount of money could buy their sovereignty in the first place.
A key message is that they have the right to define their own future.
I think that's what sometimes when people miss. We want to collaborate, we want to set up partnerships and enhance the Greenlandic economy, but it has to come through the Greenlanders. We are 56,000 people living here. We will be so reliant on external factors and collaborators. People are, of course, against any American interference, but I think to a certain extent that's wrong. Americans are welcome here as long as they respect our norms and value. I really just hope that tourism will play a vital role in the Greenlandic future and the economy, because it's about preserving nature, it's about preserving culture, and it's about preserving what we all love and really have to take care of. We are basically living in one of the last untouched ecosystems on Earth.
After Trump's rhetoric cooled in that Davos meeting room, NATO allies permitted themselves a conditional unclench. After all, Denmark, Greenland and the US all fall under NATO's security umbrella.
The alliance is premised on the idea of mutual defense.
An attack by the United States against Denmark over Greenland would end NATO as we know it.
So the stakes were just extremely high.
I think it is fair to say that the European Union and the United States are not going through the best moment in their relationship. There have been strong tensions, and Trump's statements and threats over Greenland are just the latest episode.
There are growing concerns about the threat that Russia poses to countries like the Baltics, who President Putin very much sees as part of Russia's traditional sphere of influence. If he believes that NATO is no longer the ironclad alliance that it once was, he may be emboldened to take more actions against that eastern flank.
Models of a Europe-Russia war involve vast loss of life and extraordinary financial repercussions.
We've estimated that it could cost the global economy over $1 trillion, but in many ways, the cost of that conflict would go beyond what we can quantify.
In February, NATO responded with Arctic Sentry, a mission to expand its regional presence, and for now, the alliance endures. You can put numbers on parts of Greenland, on bases and radars, and to some extent minerals and trade routes. But those estimates only tell part of the story.
Nature is directly related and embedded to our way of lives. So we could never live without it. It's what we have here that is so important for us, and we don't want that to change.
Greenland's true value, perhaps, isn't what it would cost to buy, even if it were for sale, but what its inhabitants and the world would pay if it were lost.